pleasure to welcome back to UCLA one of our own.
That's right.
Michael Datcher, author, poet, playwright. It is MA here at UCLA.
That's correct.
All right, so really happy to have him back. One of his mentors, Professor Richard Yarborough, really regrets not being able to be here today because he wanted to be here, but I think he has either out of town or something came up. I can't remember what it was. But Michael Datcher is the author of the critically acclaimed New York Times bestselling Raising Fences. His most recent produced play, Silence, was commissioned by and premiered at the Getty Museum. His poetry is widely anthologized. He's a frequent news commentator who has appeared on Nightline, Dateline, and BBC. He teaches poetry, literary nonfiction, and journalism courses at Loyola Marymount University, LMU. Today, of course, he's going to be talking about his forthcoming, or new, is it out yet?
Out now.
Oh, it is? Oh, there it is, yeah. Okay.
Bam.
His new book, Americus. Michael Datcher.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Lunchtime. Thanks, Dr. Hunt, as well, for having me. This new book, Americus, is really a novel, a narrative about what happens in our families when we have a problem that we cannot solve. Who has kids? You have kids? Okay. Most of us, when we have children, at times we can be the hero. Our kid gets sick, our kid's getting bullied, we can find a way to come and save the day. And it feels great to help our children when they're having some type of difficulty. But typically what happens in many families is that sometimes we cannot be the hero. We cannot save the day. And nothing hurts as much as seeing your child suffer and not being able to intervene and to help them. And in some families, the problems are so large. Someone gets a terrible disease, someone dies, a kid dies, something horrible that cannot be solved. And that typically will break a family up. In this book, what happens is that they have identical twin sons. And the youngest of the twin sons gets vitiligo, which is oftentimes now called the Michael Jackson disease. It makes black and brown people lose their melanin in splotches, right? Face, hands, etc. Also in this novel, as I'll begin reading in a second, the youngest of the two sons, Set, really the more charismatic of the two, was born 7 minutes behind the firstborn son, but does not get the benefit of being the firstborn son, despite being a twin. So he really has beef with his older brother about that. So all that plays a role in this opening passage. And as I'm reading, although we have a small, intimate gathering, if I say anything right now that makes you respond, please do so. You can nod your head or say, damn! That's awesome. We're going to have a little practice, so please indulge me. Count to 3 real quick and just say damn. 1, 2, 3. Damn! There it is. We are ready. We were ready. Saturday, June 10th, 1893, East St. Louis. Set knew he could never disrespect his father, but his twin brother was fair game. Born 7 minutes behind, the Tsar had taught Set the bad math of birth order, taught him that it was wrong. He knew his life could have been different had his mother's egg not been divided by 2, had he kicked and wiggled enough to slide his head out first, had a Tsar died in the womb. Set wished his brother no harm, usually, but sometimes the furry thoughts grew inside of him when he looked at the boy who had the same part running down the center of his scalp. The boy who always got to play the best part as the firstborn son. Set tried to wrestle down an ugly thought as he stared at a Tsar standing next to their father, but the image in his mind was too slimy to be stopped, too strong, dead wrong. Thank you. In this family, the father, Kev, is like many parents, including folks in this room, I'm sure, is trying to prepare his children, for a very competitive and difficult world, which is full of anti-blackness, as you can imagine, in 1893. And he wants the children to be hardworking, disciplined, etc., but not to be so free and so open that they get shot by some crazy white cat in town, as we're experiencing in this part of the world right now. In Ferguson. This book is set 13 miles from Ferguson. It's right in the same area. And so what he does as part of this attempt is he At the kid's 5th birthday, decides to stop giving them their birthday gifts. Instead, he decides to bury their birthday gifts, make a small map for them, and tell them, you have to go find your, using this map, find your gifts and return to me within an hour, or you forfeit the gifts. All right, that's his plan to make the kids know that you have to work hard for everything you get, including gifts. Right? But on their 10th birthday, he decides to bury the gifts somewhere else. And that plays a role in this next section. At 7 a.m. sharp, Caleb handed the scroll, the map scroll, to Asar. Though Set knew well the familiar protocol, he shut his eyes to protest the handoff from father to firstborn. Asar ignored Set's blind fit. Instead, he dropped to his knees as if he weren't wearing his stern brother's brown suit pants with the matching vest and jacket. Using both palms, Asar unrolled the scroll across the manicured bluegrass lawn. The map was long as he was tall. His father's meticulous script was the only thing he recognized. Asar knew this was no map of the circular backyard, no round fountain in the center, no specialty shed along the curving back wall of red rose bushes, and most obvious, no 33 round tombstones forming a circle. His eyes wide as a Morgan dollar, Asar looked up into his father's smiling hazel irises. His mother's frown went unnoticed as she gazed out at them from the kitchen window. Asar wanted to throw a roundhouse to Set's calf. Instead, he reached out and pinched hard his brother's thigh. Stop playing blind and get down here. Set refused to flinch or open his eyes, but he did buckle down to his own brown suited knees next to his big brother. Asar jabbed his index finger onto a perfectly drawn red X. Our presents are buried on Bloody Island. Like many of us probably, our parents love us, we hope. But at times their child-rearing approaches, were probably passed down from their parents, who may have been what we could probably call today old school. And that particular issue now is in the news because the great tailback for the Vikings, Adrian Peterson, has now copped a plea of no contest to basically reckless endangerment of his own child for, among other things apparently, whipping him with a switch. Now let me just, in terms of full disclosure, I have been forced to go gather many a switch as a child, right? And heard the following phrase, and don't bring back no twig. Seriously, I mean, many times, and have been whipped until whelps were on my body, no two ways about it. And so, our parents at times are doing the best they can. But that type of corporal punishment, it does have its effects. There's no choice about it. And so, anyway, in this story, Caleb is trying to do better, trying to take what was good about his father's child rearing, but then lose the rest of some of the craziness with his own kids. Caleb Americus had been burying his son's birthday presents since they were 5 years old. It allowed him to combine his love of map making and man making. He inherited his own father's skill with maps, but was determined to shake the patriarch's crude child-rearing approach and shake off its effects. A slow process. Caleb still had the self-conscious look of a critical father's only child. Just beneath seamless skin was a puzzle face with pieces jammed to fit. Caleb had learned from experience that tough love wasn't love, it was just tough. That's why it made Caleb feel like such a good daddy last week when the twins' big rusty butts tumbled into the library and asked to test his bucking bronco knees, a rambling ride that he enjoyed more than his boys. Caleb had long decided that the twins' birthdays would officially start their rites of passage into manhood. His own father had always told him that 10 was a number of perfection. When Caleb's wife, Matilda, went into labor on Sunday, June 10th, 1883, he knew there was going to be something special about his child. What Kev didn't know was that the specialness would come in twos. From the day baby-faced Dr. Nathaniel Mandrake handed the twins from exhausted wife to elated father, Kev Americus began plotting how to build his little boys into perfect men. So as an avid reader of all literature, all different genres of literature, and country of origin type of literature, I haven't come across very many reasonable or believable and or accurate presentations of black lovingness, black marriage, or black committed relationships. I just haven't. Where folks are nuanced, especially when the women are strong black women. I was raised around super dynamic, charismatic women who were just bad. I've only dated those kind of women because that's what I saw coming up. And I have many couples in my life who are black couples, so I don't really see us represented very well. So part of my agenda with this book was to, in a way, create hopefully a good story, but along the way to really show what it's like to be married and to be black and have kids and to be doing your thing, you know, trying to survive and what happens. And as you know, if you do have kids, you know that one issue when you're with someone, you have kids, is one parent may have a different attitude or understanding or philosophy about raising those damn kids, and that can be a major source of conflict. For sure. So I want to also deal with that kind of complication. And lastly, I want to really show just women who are strong and how they negotiate power dynamics as black people, in this case in the 1890s, you know, where socio-politically they were delimited by their gender. So all that plays a role in the book, but certainly in this upcoming section here as well. From the kitchen window, Matilda used both hands to part the curtain of wavy black hair draping her buttermilk face. A face that embodied the agitated curiosity of the smart girl, searching for interesting questions while others were content with convenient answers. Matilda watched the twins skip towards the house. When she met them at the kitchen door, Matilda sucked the frown into her reckless eyeballs. "Mama, mama, mama," they said, forcing a smile on her face. "I know, mama knows. Now run along like your father told you and get your compasses." Indeed, Matilda did know. Kev usually shared his plans with his wife in infinite detail. Sometimes to get her opinion, rarely to get her approval. An approach that kept a fire under most discussions about rearing their sons. Matilda stormed out the kitchen's back door and stalked towards the Americus fountain. The sienna tea gown hugging her waist flared out over her quick-moving ankles. Kev was still crouched over the mat, awaiting the twins' return. Now, not every husband could have heard their wife's small, bare feet high-stepping across a thick carpet of bluegrass, but Kev did. He expected it. Matilda Americus was the kind of woman who took things to the end of the line. The boys had yet to leave the property, so the end of the line had yet to be reached. Kev knew his wife would have to try one last time to change his mind. Her lips pursed like a short-tempered nun about to break a vow of silence. Matilda stood over her husband and his goddamn map. Kev's eyes shifted from the map to the sienna tea gown with embroidered monarch butterflies on the flowing fringe, peeking beneath the fringe a small-boned, high-arched foot that could have belonged to a 12-year-old cakewalk champion. Kev knew each individual toe so intimately. Over a decade of placing them phalange by phalange into his mouth. His tongue knew the knuckle hump of his wife's petite big toe. His lips could calculate the angle of her curving pinky toe. Matilda squatted face to face with Kev's half-lidded hazel eyes. She leaned in, her reckless eyeballs redirected to opposite corners like gentlemen prize fighters. Kev, you know this town better than I do. Matilda's hard whisper sent spittle onto the short lapels of his black silk sack suit. Bloody Island, she continued. You know what goes on there. You should be out here having this talk with yourself. Kev leaned back, examined Matilda's Dakota Indian cheekbones, the buttermilk that covered them, the lips spitting on him, two fleshy wedges of pink grapefruit, and those carnival freak eyes, the opposite of crossed eyes. If it were not for some dramatic flaw in such an alluring high yellow face, Kev still wondered at times whether she would have agreed to marry a man with onyx skin. Light is right, usually trumped colored money. Say something, she said. Nut, I've already said what I plan to do. And hey, these are my sons too. And 10 is too young to be putting them in danger. You can't go across all those rail tracks way out to Bloody Island. This will help them learn. Why don't you just trail behind them? Don't send my babies out there to have their little heads crushed under a train. Stop being ridiculous. They could die out there. Who died? Seth said. From the kitchen door, his big bone athletic body came bounding across the bluegrass. He yelled over his shoulder, "Sorry, we have a new body coming in. Daddy, don't start until we get back, okay?" Matilda stood, avoided the twins' faces, and marched back towards the kitchen. At the door, she spun around, giving flight to the monarch butterflies on the dress's fringe. Reckless eyeballs found her husband. His eyes were cast down upon East St. Louis, index finger imagining a course for his sons. As Asar and Set nestled beside him on their knees, Kev avoided almond eyes. She didn't want them to see the emotion welling in his own pair. Kev had waited a decade to send the boys on this journey. He hoped they would return with the gift that would initiate them into young manhood, even if they didn't understand the gift or what the gift bestowed. In this last section I'll read, this book is about twins. So it's also a reimagining of the primordial Egyptian or ancient Egyptian or Kemetic story of Asar and Set, who are really the primary deities in that system. They were both twins and rivals. So, you know, I'm again, avid reader, so I've read many adaptations of Greek mythology brought to different eras, in plays and literature, but really haven't honestly read an effective, compelling story of a black-centered, an African-centered, African-centric narrative that was drawn from mythology. So I wanted to do that for this particular project. And it's set in East St. Louis, as I said before, which is 13 miles from Ferguson. That part of the country is, first of all, it's just, who's never been to East St. Louis? Whoa. That is like, before you die, get a bulletproof vest, but then go to East St. Louis, just to have the experience. First, it is officially the blackest city in America. It's like 99.2%. There's like probably a white cat. There's a white cat who lives off 3rd Street. I mean, it's a joke. I don't know. It's just a joke. But it is the blackest city in America. And when you visit, what you see right away is that, well, let me say it this way. So Miles Davis is from there. There's a Miles Davis Elementary School. And Miles was known for his coolness. In East St. Louis, there's like 25,000 Miles Davises. People are really into personal style and performance of the self. People are super, super, super cool. I mean, it's striking you like, whoa, people are cool here. I feel uncool right now, y'all. So I am serious. I was so impressed. I was like, wow, y'all some cool motherfuckers here. Jesus. I was so like amazed. But also the town has a terrible, terrible, terrible history of race and racism. East St. Louis, even today, it still has the worst race riot on record in terms of numbers of lives lost in the American city. The low estimates range between 300 and 325 lives lost, but it's way more than that, I'm sure. Blacks who were lynched from from light poles, shot, burned the hell up, really horrible. The famous image of the race riots, I'm sure you've seen it, is of a man his back is arched. He's tied to kind of a wooden bed spring, and his back is arched. He's been set on fire, and there's smoke coming out of his mouth. He's completely burnt to a crisp. It's a very infamous photo. That's from East St. Louis. Terrible situation. And so the research for this book, I flew there several times. I talked to survivors of the race riot, their children. I talked to the mayor. I did a lot of due diligence in this book, which you can only imagine. So this last section, I wanted to talk about the twins and their friendship and relationship. Very complicated point of this book. And again, thanks for being here. And thanks for listening. So in this part of the book, they are going to get their treasure, but they stopped at a meat packing plant. At the time, East St. Louis was second to Chicago in terms of meat packing, slaughterhouse work, and also rail towns. It was a major town of industry. So they've stopped to go explore. It was still early in the yards. Workers entering through the main gate walked straight towards the huge building with Armour and Company across the top. The outdoor pens were mostly unmanned. I guess it doesn't take too many men to watch over sheep since they've got their own big old eyes, Seth said. Asar was quiet, tense. Maybe we should pet one, Seth said, smiling. Asar's body jerked towards his brother. No, Seth. You are more scaredy than these stinky, inky sheep, and they're about to get killed, Seth said, drawing his forefinger across his throat. No one's even watching us. If you climb that fence, I swear to God, I will sock you right in the behind. I'm not going to climb it, Mr. Scaredy Cat. I'm just going to stick my hand through and pet one. Before Asar could come up with a good reply, Seth stuck his whole left arm into the pen and began doing his sheep call. Sheep, sheep, sheep. Asar looked quickly left and right, then behind himself. To his relief, a young sheep about 5 feet from the fence stayed there. These sheep don't speak English, stupid. You don't know which these languages they speak, Asar said. Seth ignored his brother. He stuck his other arm through it and wiggled his fingers and added his best imitation of a Polish accent. Sheep, ski, sheep, ski, sheep, ski. The lamb looked right at Seth and bleated again, and then started to cautiously move towards him. Seth poured on the Polish ski. A horrified Asar began looking around to see if anyone was watching. Cut it out, Seth. Sheep, ski. The baby Polish sheep again bleated and came within petting distance. Seth lunged forward, grabbed the startled lamb by the throat with both hands and squeezed as hard as he could. The sheep bucked, but Seth snatched him closer until the sheep's wild eyes were inches from his own. In one quick motion, Seth released his left hand just long enough to forcefully jab his left forefinger through the soft flesh adjacent to the lamb's eye and yanked the bulging oval right out of its socket. The bleating, hysterical sheep broke free of Seth's grip and wildly zigzagged like a puffy bronco, big eyeball flopping from its optical cord, a crazed stare on a string. Seth's eyes grew large too. Sheep. The bleating bronco started a bleating contest among the other sheep. This collective animal wail reverberated inside Asar's skull as he stared at Seth, who was staring at the traumatized youth. Asar watched Seth's excitement at creating chaos and pain again. In these moments, Asar felt a kind of fear. He wasn't afraid of his brother. Asar was afraid that he and his brother were only twins on the outside. Thank you. So again, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. And I will entertain questions. So when we speak, say your name. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
I'm Frances. and I actually know you from the world stage, yes. So my question is, because I know you as a poet, how that factors into your writing this book, and then talk to us a little bit about your creative process, how long it took you, and what informed, I mean, you've talked about it a bit, but what informed this book, and how poetry plays a part in it.
Okay, good question. The book was informed by a desire to talk about America. You know, the tropes of America are rooted in things like the bootstrap mentality. This is the land of opportunity for all if you just work hard enough. And that is true for some people, of course. Some of our families probably have benefit from that particular trope being true for them. But for most of us, if you're black or brown in particular, those tropes don't apply. It's a lot. So I wanted to just offer a different narrative about how America became America, by exploiting labor, by rampant race and racism. There's that. And that's kind of the backdrop. It's kind of interwoven into the whole narrative. The race riot, for example, jumped off because the white immigrants who were just trying to make a better life for themselves began to organize in unions. They began to be effective at having work stoppages and work slowdowns. The folks who owned the factories began to recruit blacks from the South and the black press, who then came to East St. Louis and Chicago to work in these factories. They broke those strike lines, and of course that fomented racial tension. So I wanted to talk about the intersection of race and economics as well, but all within the context of the story. So largely, I want to talk about just family life, because when you have a family, you will do pretty much anything to protect them, make them survive. But the African American sojourn around family in this country has been super complicated. So I wanted to really explore black family life in the context of raging anti-blackness. How does one have a healthy attitude about oneself and about one's community when you are dealing with this craziness all around you? But ultimately, I wanted to tell a good story, because it is my belief that when you tell a great story, the other things will find a way to the subconscious. As a poet, I know the power of language. So along with the writing of the story, the research and the character development, all that stuff, in the rewriting, I really, really wanted to have the language be its own kind of power. So hopefully I told a great story, but then the rewriting, and as a poet, I know language, really, really combing through literally line by line by line, like in a crazy way, like in an obsessive way. Literally every punctuation, every comma, every period, every word choice, everything, every word has been completely like,
We can tell.
Looked over, right? So it is my hope. So again, I said that Miles Davis is from this town, East St. Louis, and so it's a town that's really steeped in music. And so I played Miles Davis's album, Kind of Blue. I looped it basically, and I was trying to get the feeling, because he's from the town, of that album in this book. What Miles is really great at, as I've known but learned by just being a fan of his, he's great at putting emotion into notes, but also being silent. He's good at silence. So this book, I don't just tell the story. I don't go A, B, C, D. I will go A, B, and I'll skip to E, and I will want the reader to have to fill in some of the blanks. So in the book, there's lots of silences in the book. So in terms of the process, that played a major role in terms of how the book was constructed. Really influenced, really one album, how he approached this modal album. Because this book is a modal book. It's very trance-inducing once you read the book. If you read the book, it's very like a small trance hits you because of the language and the storytelling. So this is the 19th draft of this book. At one point, in terms of length of pages, it was 674 pages, and now it's in this version, it's 314. So just like a lot of a lot of shopping. So it's a lot. That's been a challenge, but it's good. Yes. So what's your name?
Darnell. Yeah. So obviously, I can tell just from the passages you read that it's a book that's rich in symbols, and there's a lot going on at other levels of analysis. Along those lines, I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about the title and
Sure.
the name. I mean, I gathered from the passage that's the last name of the family.
That's right.
But I'm sure there's a lot going on there, so I want you to talk a little bit more about the choice.
Yeah, thank you. So in the book, the grandfather, who was Kev, the twins' father, grandfather, is really a self-made man. He actually escaped slavery and opens up eventually a mortuary called Americus and Center.
Okay.
And when he escapes his slave master, he decides to not keep that name. He's like, I'm not going to keep this name. And he contemplates what to do, and he thinks, well, you know, he says in the book, next to folks who are Native American, black people have done the most to make this country. So I'm going to call myself Americus after Americus Vespucci.
Okay.
And so then he says that all black people should take the last name. And he jokes and says, you know, it should be Frederick, and then Douglas, Frederick Vespucci. I mean, Frederick Americus. It should be Sojourner Americus. That's kind of a joke in the book, right? He feels like that we've done so much to make America, that we should have this name Americus. And so that's also a part of the part of the book, which tries to really reimagine the American tropes that we've all been raised with. This country, as we know, because you guys are scholars, I mean, the impact, the wealth created because of slavery impacted the world. It enriched the world. You know, the bankers who gave loans, the folks who got those business loans here in the UK, across Europe, actually. White folk who lived here, but also black people have benefited a great deal, us in this room, by the creation of wealth. I mean, although Reagan was a fool, that trickle-down theory, there is some truth to that. Not very much, but it does trickle down a little bit. And that little bit came to us, which is in some ways why we can be in this university today. So I wanted to talk about that, but all in the context of the story. It's all about the story in this book. But along the way, it just happens. You meet these people. There's Ivy Wells is in this book. Fred Douglas is in this book. It's a mixture of real people and made-up people. And it's my goal to have you not know who's made up and who's real. There's politicians in this book, there's made-up politicians, there's real people, there's folks who are completely made up. So that's part of hopefully the magic of the story. So thanks. Yes.
Well, first of all, beautifully written.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Very excited to read it. So when you started the story, did you know where it was going?
In a way. The story is the basic story of Asar and Set, like what happens in this mythological narrative. And so I had the basic template, but at a very basic level. So I had to then make these into real people, right? Like families and stories and like actual real people. And that was the hard part of the book, was really making these mythological beings into like real people with real problems, real issues, real drama. And at that point, when that actually happens, that's when the magic kind of happens. And the people start literally, it's like people in this room, they are like just people. We're just kind of talking to you. And they're just behaving at that point. They're just doing what they do, engaged. So no, I didn't know what was going to happen. They were just like hanging out, doing their family thing. And it just happened in front of me, and I was kind of documenting. So yeah, that's how it kind of evolved as the book did its thing.
But the major arc is kind of there. It's based on the mythology.
Yeah,
so.
right. So
but within that, there were all these other things happening that they kind of took on a life of its own as you were writing the characters.
Yeah, because think about it. I mean, we all have friends, families. So this book, Set, is the precursor in the Christian context to Seta, or Satan. Set is known in the Egyptian context as the great deceiver. His color was red. There's a great book by Elaine Pagels. You guys know Elaine Pagels? Harvard. She's a theologian. She's famous for the Gnostic Gospels. So she has a book called The Making of Satan, which is a really important source of this book. And she argues that, which I believe to be true, that Set or Seta is the precursor to the Satan that we have in the Bible. Asar, what the Greeks called Osiris. He was known in the African tradition as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He was killed by Set. On the third day he rose again. He was known as the God of truth. So things that people equate with Jesus. It's very clear that if you know the history that Jesus, if you believe in Jesus as a person, studied or traveled or went to Egypt. There's too much similarity between these belief systems not to, that can't be coincidence. So basically the book is essentially about Satan and the Christ figure in their mythology. So I had to find a way to make Satan attractive and likable, or to have sympathy for the devil, as the Stones would say. And that was also a challenge. And how do you make, because this book, Seth does a lot of devilish bad things. He's the devil. He does what he does. You know, that's the story. He has to be the devil. He does a lot of very, very, very wicked, horrible, horrible things. But he does it with pizzazz. Very charismatic, a lot of charm. And he just brings down the hammer, or the knife, or other things of destruction. So I wanted to really tell that story that I knew, but then again make it so that the people were actually attractive, even when they were doing super horrible. I mean, really, he does like really bad things. But you know, you kind of like him because he's got so much charisma. You know, I was telling someone recently that when I was a kid, I was raised in a neighborhood that was, you know, it was. Well, let me say this. So, in our families, we may know people in our families or our friends' families who, I mean, who've done really bad things in parts of their lives, but another part of them is good. They're a good father, or they're a good friend, they're very loyal, but another part of them is like straight monster, straight like literally sociopath. When I was a kid, I knew guys who were sociopaths. I mean, gangsters, hardcore killers. And with me, as a younger cat in the neighborhood, they were cool. They looked out for me. They were my friends. They're like my sociopath mentors. Don't be alarmed right now. I've cut those ties. Don't be alarmed right now. No, but really, I mean, hardcore. So I also wanted to talk about that. What happens in our families when someone's in our family, or who's like, and to keep it real, a lot of times it surrounds sexual violence. In our families, we know that in our families, you know, the dudes usually, our uncles, our cousins, can be sexual predators. So in our family, when certain people came in the house, the kids' room got locked. That's just, of course, right? So I wanted to deal with that. What happens in your family when you have someone in the family who is a monster, who is crazy? What do you do? There's an old African saying that says, there is no place, there is no bush in which to throw away a bad child, right? And so in many families, including mine, when people did bad things, we had to deal with it. We didn't call the police. At times we jumped on them, like got physical with them, to be honest. We didn't call the police though. We dealt with it in the house. Yeah. So, and that's not, you know, I don't recommend that. I mean, that is an imperfect way to deal with people who are crazy, you know. But anyway, I wanted to also deal with that in this book. Set is the devil. He's based upon Satan. I've written about Satan as a kid, how he became Satan, you know. But I wanted to do it in a way that made him human, and that involved him having enduring qualities. He's very charismatic. He's funny. He's very bold, very courageous. He's a leader. He's the guy, you know. But he's also wow, like people in my own family, crazy. So thanks for asking about this.
So what about the time period? I mean, obviously a pivotal point in American history, but why did you pick that moment to kind of set your story?
Well, I wanted to talk about the St. Louis race riot.
Okay.
When I learned about that, I was like, why didn't I learn
so it occupies a big part of the book.
Well, no, it doesn't actually, but it's the thing in the air. It's the backdrop. Okay. It does happen in the book, but it's kind of like it's referred to more than actually is seen on the page.
Oh, okay.
It's race and violence overhangs this book, and I wanted to use that just to talk about how in America race and violence is a scrim, is an overhang in our experience. At least in my experience coming up here. I mean, how black men are viewed, but also how black men treat each other. At least in my neighborhood, there's a lot of violence in my neighborhood. But how the physical, how the embodied black subject, when he comes into a space, how that space changes, and the threat or the imagined threat of violence is always there. I recall recently, this is so terrible too, but I was at work at LMU, and I was going to my office, having a great day. You know, so when the sun is out, you know, you're feeling good. I was having a great day. I probably so well, you know. I get in the elevator, probably in a sports jacket, got these corny glasses on, probably in a satchel. I'm clearly going to my job, or either that I'm a high-paid janitor, you know, that was going on, you know. And this young white woman, no, she was a middle-aged white woman, sees me, her eyes get big. It's the true story. She literally moves in the corner of the elevator like a bad movie, and clutches her purse and does this. It gets me the who's the great boxer, the Floyd Mayweather shoulder like this. It's the boxing shoulder, like all this right here. It was like, and I almost said, but I'm glad I caught myself. I almost said, "You've got nothing I want." But I caught myself, thank God. But I was really hurt by it. It really hurt me. It hurt me because I was offended, first of all. But I recognized that she was literally afraid of me. She wasn't encountering me like with Datcher. She was encountering the trope of blackness. And that's what those cops who shot Michael Brown encountered, with the young man who shot Zimmerman, the young man who shot Trayvon Martin encountered, not a student who was his father's best friend, as Trayvon Martin was. He encountered the trope of blackness. But in that moment, I thought, wow, she's encountering me as a trope right now. I've been tropatized right now. It's happening to me. I'm a trope. Oh my God. And that made me super sad. The bad thing is, and I didn't say anything, I just took it. You know, I'm gonna have to meditate and heal and eat some chocolate, you know, get on heal up again, you know. But thank God I have a way to deal with it, to write, meditate, and other types of practices. Most people don't have that. They just hold it in and they walk around, they internalize that type of impact. The point is that the overhang of race and violence in our country is so pervasive, it's so powerful. We've got to find a way to deal with this. I've seen black men, I'm talking about driven, lose their minds. Driven literally crazy. In the academy, wow. In the academy it happens because most of us in the academy, we are in a very privileged set. And at times, you know, the whole graduate school approach can really make anyone lose their mind. But as people of color entering into the academy, we are having to deal with the fact that people are constantly judging us, are reading our black bodies all the time. You have to, and/or brown bodies. Every meeting that that you're in, every faculty that you open your mouth, you feel the pressure of speaking for the race or not embarrassing the race. Every small meeting you are in, every social gathering when you're drinking. So I have many black colleagues who don't drink with their white colleagues at work, including me. It's just so much. Walking down the street, being in the elevator, you know, if you don't work on yourself or how to negotiate race, it can make you fucking crazy. You will lose your mind. I've seen it happen to people. It's pretty frightening. It's pretty scary, you know. But it doesn't have to be that way, you know. We can do a better job at discussing these issues, writing about them, going to therapy. It's eating more chocolate. That's my advice. Eat some chocolate.
Last question. What's been the critical response and what has been the audience response to the book so far?
You know, it's been pretty amazing. You know, the critics are comparing the book to Toni Morrison, to August Wilson, and Marquez. So it's been a lot of crazy, like very exciting. The crazy media too. So I've been on the BBC. I've been everywhere. So now I'm getting calls from abroad. It's going to call, or email, I should say, from Lebanon. We're doing a huge conference there in Beirut. I'm traveling around the country as we speak. I leave next week. And the audience, which has been encouraging, it's fiction. So people don't really like to read fiction that is going to be too late. People want to escape their lives, which I totally get. And not that those kind of books don't have value. I think it's fine to have any kind of book. I love all kinds of fiction. Folks don't really want to read a book typically where the backdrop is a race riot, where people are having, where the devil is being the devil, you know. But because the story it is a good story. I mean, it's funny, it's kind of crazy, there's a lot of fun into the story. People seem to be liking the book a lot, so I'm encouraged by that. So it's possible to do it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.